Welcome, traveler. Tonight, there is nowhere to rush and nothing you need to solve. Imagine that the year is 1874, and the first pale light of dawn quietly reaches a lonely wooden cabin somewhere on the edge of the American frontier. You slowly open your eyes, expecting the familiar comfort of a modern bedroom. Instead, you find yourself lying on a thin straw mattress covered by a rough wool blanket. The air feels cold enough to make every breath visible, and the scent of dry timber fills the room. Outside, the wind pushes gently against the cabin walls, creating a soft creaking sound that never truly stops. It has become part of everyday life here. There are no engines, no phones, and no distant city noise. Only the whisper of the prairie stretching farther than you can see. You sit up carefully, feeling the stiffness in your back after sleeping on a bed far less comfortable than anything you have ever known. A small iron stove stands in the corner, but the fire died sometime during the night. If you want warmth, you must build it yourself. The cabin contains only a few simple belongings. A wooden table marked with years of use. 2 handmade chairs. A worn leather hat hanging beside the door. A pair of muddy boots waiting for another difficult day. You quietly pull them on, noticing how heavy they feel compared with modern shoes. Every step in this land demands effort. Even before breakfast, the frontier reminds you that comfort is a rare luxury. As you open the cabin door, the cool morning air greets your face. Endless grasslands roll toward the horizon, interrupted only by scattered trees and distant hills painted gold by the rising sun. For just a moment, everything seems peaceful. Birds glide silently overhead. A horse grazes near a weathered fence. Gentle wind carries the smell of fresh earth across the open land. Yet beneath this peaceful scene lies a difficult truth. Life here is not easy. Every meal must be earned. Every bucket of water must be carried. Every sunset is a quiet reminder that survival depends on preparation, patience, and a little luck. You take one slow breath, step onto the dusty ground, and begin your very first day on the frontier. And before the morning is even over, you will discover that finding breakfast is far more difficult than you ever imagined. The morning sun has only just begun to warm the wide frontier, yet your stomach is already reminding you that a new day always begins with work. In this quiet corner of the American West, breakfast does not simply appear on a table. Every bite must first be earned through effort, patience, and careful planning. You step outside the cabin and notice a wooden bucket resting beside the porch. Before food comes water. The nearest stream is nearly half a mile away, and the journey must be made on foot. The path is uneven, scattered with stones and dry grass that crunch softly beneath your boots. The air is fresh, but every step reminds you that even the simplest task demands time. When you finally reach the stream, the water looks clear enough, yet appearances can be misleading. Many settlers drank untreated water, never knowing whether it carried dangerous illnesses. Still, there is little choice. You fill the bucket, lift its surprising weight, and slowly begin the long walk back home. By the time you return, your arms already ache. Inside the cabin, there is no refrigerator waiting with fresh milk, fruit, or eggs. Instead, a small cloth sack holds coarse flour, while a wooden box contains a few pieces of salted pork that were preserved weeks ago. Nearby sits a tin cup filled with coffee beans, one of the few small comforts many pioneers treasured. You light the iron stove using dry pieces of wood gathered the evening before. It takes patience before the first flames finally catch, filling the cabin with gentle warmth and the comforting crackle of burning timber. Breakfast is simple. A thick biscuit made from flour and water. A few slices of salty pork cooked over the fire. Perhaps a cup of strong black coffee if enough beans remain. There is no sugar unless someone managed to buy it during a rare trip to town. As you eat slowly, you begin to understand something important. Food is not prepared for pleasure here. It is prepared for survival. Every crumb matters because the next opportunity to restock supplies may be weeks away. Outside, the quiet prairie stretches endlessly beneath the bright morning sky. It almost invites you to believe that life here is peaceful. But the frontier has a habit of hiding its hardships behind beautiful landscapes. You finish the last bite, place your tin plate on the wooden table, and quietly stand once more. Breakfast is over. Now the real work, and the real dangers of the Wild West, are about to begin. The last crumbs of breakfast have disappeared, and the quiet comfort of the cabin is already behind you. Out here on the frontier, the morning is not a time for relaxation. It is the signal that another long day of work has begun. You step into the cool air, pulling your hat a little lower to keep the growing sunlight from your eyes. The prairie stretches endlessly in every direction, its tall grass moving gently with the breeze. From a distance, it almost looks peaceful enough to forget how demanding this land can be. Near the cabin, an old horse waits patiently beside a weathered fence. It has carried heavy loads for years, asking for little more than food, water, and rest. In the Wild West, a reliable horse is often more valuable than many possessions. Without one, simple journeys can take an entire day. Today's first task is repairing a damaged fence. During the night, strong winds loosen several wooden posts, and wandering cattle could easily escape through the gaps. You lift rough pieces of timber, feeling splinters scrape against your hands. There are no power tools to finish the job quickly. Every nail is driven by hand, one careful strike at a time. As the hours pass, the morning coolness slowly disappears. The sun climbs higher, warming the open plains until the air feels dry and heavy. Dust rises beneath every step, sticking to your boots and clothes. Sweat forms across your forehead, but stopping for too long is not an option. There is always another chore waiting. A wagon slowly rolls along a distant trail, its wooden wheels groaning with every turn. The driver raises a hand in greeting before continuing toward the nearest settlement, still many miles away. Encounters like this are brief. Neighbors may live several hours apart, and days can pass without seeing another person. Around midday, you pause beneath the small shade of a cottonwood tree. Your lunch is simple, a piece of cold bread and a little dried beef wrapped in cloth. It is hardly a feast, but it provides enough energy to continue. As you quietly eat, your eyes drift across the endless landscape. Beautiful as it seems, the frontier offers no guarantees. A sudden storm, a frightened animal, or a simple accident can change everything in a matter of moments. You finish your meal, stand once again, and brush the dust from your clothes. The afternoon still lies ahead. And before the sun sets, you will learn that the greatest danger of the Wild West is not always another person. By the time the afternoon sun hangs high above the prairie, your clothes are covered in dust and your muscles have begun to ache. You have already worked for hours, yet the day is far from over. On the frontier, nature never pauses, and neither can you. The land around you is breathtakingly beautiful. Endless fields shimmer beneath the golden sunlight, while distant mountains stand quietly against the blue sky. A gentle breeze carries the scent of dry grass across the open plain. For a moment, everything feels calm. But appearances can be deceiving. The American frontier is a place where beauty and danger exist side by side. A peaceful morning can become a violent afternoon without warning. As you continue walking, dark clouds slowly gather along the western horizon. At first, they seem harmless, drifting silently across the sky. Then the wind changes. It grows stronger with every passing minute, bending the tall grass until it nearly touches the ground. The air suddenly becomes still. Experienced settlers know this silence well. It often comes just before a powerful storm. Within minutes, the wind roars across the prairie. Dust rises into the air, making it difficult to see more than a few steps ahead. Tiny grains of sand strike your face like countless little needles. You pull your hat down tightly and cover your mouth with a cloth, but the dust finds its way into your eyes and every breath you take. Lightning flashes across the dark sky, followed by the deep rumble of thunder that seems to shake the earth beneath your feet. There is no sturdy shelter nearby. No weather forecast warned you this morning. Only a lonely cabin standing far behind you. You move as quickly as you can, but running across uneven ground is exhausting. Every step feels heavier than the last. The storm reminds you that on the frontier, people never truly controlled nature. They simply learned to respect it. After what feels like an eternity, the strongest winds finally begin to fade. The clouds drift eastward, leaving behind broken branches, scattered debris, and fresh mud covering the trail. The prairie grows quiet once more. Birds slowly return to the sky, and sunlight breaks through the clouds as though nothing had happened. You stop for a moment, catching your breath. Today, you were fortunate. But every settler knew that the next storm could be stronger, and not everyone would make it home before nightfall. As the evening approaches, another challenge is waiting for you. The last rays of sunlight slowly disappear behind the distant hills, painting the wide prairie in soft shades of orange and purple. After a long day of hard work, you finally begin the walk back toward your small cabin. Every step feels heavier than the one before, and the quiet landscape that seemed welcoming this morning now feels strangely unfamiliar. As darkness settles over the frontier, the temperature begins to fall surprisingly fast. The warm afternoon is replaced by a cool evening breeze that carries the scent of dry earth and distant pine trees. There are no street lights to guide your way. No glowing windows from nearby neighborhoods. Only the fading light of the sky and the narrow trail beneath your boots. When you finally reach the cabin, your first task is not preparing dinner. It is building a fire. You gather the dry wood stacked beside the wall and carefully place it inside the old iron stove. After several attempts, a small flame begins to grow, filling the room with gentle warmth and dancing shadows. The crackling fire becomes more than a source of heat. It becomes your closest companion in the long frontier night. Dinner is even simpler than breakfast. A small bowl of beans slowly cooks over the fire, joined by a piece of coarse bread left from the morning. The meal is plain, but after a day of physical labor, it feels satisfying enough. Outside, the world grows completely dark. The silence is unlike anything you have ever experienced. Then, somewhere far across the prairie, a long, lonely howl breaks the stillness. Perhaps it is a coyote searching for food. Perhaps it is a pack of wolves traveling beneath the stars. You cannot be certain. The sound fades, only to return a few minutes later from another direction. You instinctively check that the cabin door is securely locked. The windows are small, and the wooden walls seem much thinner than they did during daylight. Every creak of the timber makes you wonder whether it is simply the wind, or something moving outside. The fire continues to burn softly, casting a warm glow across the room. You sit quietly in a wooden chair, listening to the steady rhythm of the flames. In moments like these, the frontier teaches an important lesson. Courage does not always mean facing danger with a weapon. Sometimes, courage simply means making it safely through another ordinary day. You wrap the wool blanket around your shoulders and watch the fire slowly settle into glowing embers. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise. Another day of hard work. And perhaps, another unexpected challenge waiting somewhere beyond the endless horizon. The last rays of sunlight slowly disappear behind the distant hills, painting the wide prairie in soft shades of orange and purple. After a long day of hard work, you finally begin the walk back toward your small cabin. Every step feels heavier than the one before, and the quiet landscape that seemed welcoming this morning now feels strangely unfamiliar. As darkness settles over the frontier, the temperature begins to fall surprisingly fast. The warm afternoon is replaced by a cool evening breeze that carries the scent of dry earth and distant pine trees. There are no streetlights to guide your way. No glowing windows from nearby neighborhoods. Only the fading light of the sky and the narrow trail beneath your boots. When you finally reach the cabin, your first task is not preparing dinner. It is building a fire. You gather the dry wood stacked beside the wall and carefully place it inside the old iron stove. After several attempts, a small flame begins to grow, filling the room with gentle warmth and dancing shadows. The crackling fire becomes more than a source of heat. It becomes your closest companion in the long frontier night. Dinner is even simpler than breakfast. A small bowl of beans slowly cooks over the fire, joined by a piece of coarse bread left from the morning. The meal is plain, but after a day of physical labor, it feels satisfying enough. Outside, the world grows completely dark. The silence is unlike anything you have ever experienced. Then, somewhere far across the prairie, a long, lonely howl breaks the stillness. Perhaps it is a coyote searching for food. Perhaps it is a pack of wolves traveling beneath the stars. You cannot be certain. The sound fades, only to return a few minutes later from another direction. You instinctively check that the cabin door is securely locked. The windows are small, and the wooden walls seem much thinner than they did during daylight. Every creak of the timber makes you wonder whether it is simply the wind, or something moving outside. The fire continues to burn softly, casting a warm glow across the room. You sit quietly in a wooden chair, listening to the steady rhythm of the flames. In moments like these, the frontier teaches an important lesson. Courage does not always mean facing danger with a weapon. Sometimes, courage simply means making it safely through another ordinary day. You wrap the wool blanket around your shoulders and watch the fire slowly settle into glowing embers. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise. Another day of hard work. And perhaps, another unexpected challenge waiting somewhere beyond the endless horizon. The morning arrives with clear skies and a cool breeze drifting across the prairie. The storm from yesterday has passed, leaving the land quiet once again. After finishing a simple breakfast and feeding your horse, you prepare for a journey that every settler made from time to time. Today, you are traveling to the nearest frontier town. The ride takes several hours. The narrow dirt trail winds through rolling grasslands, crossing shallow streams and rocky hills. Along the way, you pass only a handful of travelers. A family in a covered wagon slowly heads west, hoping to build a new life. A lone cowboy tips his hat as he rides by without saying a word. Out here, every meeting is brief, and every traveler has somewhere important to be. As the sun climbs higher, the town finally appears in the distance. It is much smaller than you expected. A single dusty street runs through the center, lined with wooden buildings that have weathered years of wind and heat. Horses stand tied to hitching posts while wagons creak slowly past. Dust hangs in the air with every passing step, giving the whole town a soft brown haze. You begin walking down the main street. The general store is your first stop. Inside, shelves are filled with flour, coffee, candles, nails, blankets, and simple tools. There are no endless choices like a modern supermarket. If the store has what you need, you buy it. If not, you may wait weeks for the next shipment to arrive. Nearby stands the blacksmith's workshop. The steady ringing of hammer against hot iron echoes through the town. Sparks fly as glowing metal is shaped into horseshoes, wagon parts, and farming tools. Without skilled blacksmiths, life on the frontier would become far more difficult. Further along the street, children laugh outside a small one-room schoolhouse while a teacher patiently gathers them inside. Education exists here, but it is simple, and many children spend just as much time helping their families as they do studying. The town feels busy, yet peaceful. Still, everyone knows that peace can disappear in an instant. Arguments sometimes begin over land, money, or cattle. Most end with harsh words, but a few become far more dangerous. Because of this, the local sheriff quietly watches the street, hoping that today will remain calm. As the afternoon fades, you finish your shopping and secure your supplies onto the horse. The journey home awaits. The sun slowly begins its descent, casting long golden shadows across the prairie. You take one last look at the little frontier town before turning toward the endless open land. Tomorrow, you will discover that surviving the Wild West depended not only on courage, but also on trusting the people around you. Morning sun rises gently over the frontier, painting the prairie with soft shades of gold. After yesterday's visit to the small town, your supplies are neatly stored inside the cabin. There is enough flour for another week, fresh coffee to enjoy in the mornings, and a few simple tools that will make life a little easier. Yet as you step outside, you begin to understand that food and equipment are not the most valuable things a settler could own. Out here, trust is worth even more. Life on the American frontier is simply too difficult to survive alone. Cabins are often separated by miles of open land, and neighbors may be the only people who can help when something goes wrong. A broken wagon, a sick child, or an unexpected storm can quickly become a serious emergency. As you begin repairing a section of the roof damaged by yesterday's winds, you notice a rider approaching from across the prairie. It is your nearest neighbor. His horse moves slowly through the tall grass before stopping beside the fence. With a friendly smile, he explains that one of his wagon wheels has cracked while hauling supplies. Without repair, he cannot reach town before the next market day. You set your own work aside without hesitation. Together, the two of you lift the heavy wagon, remove the damaged wheel, and carefully fit a spare one into place. The work is slow and tiring, but conversation makes the hours pass more gently. You exchange stories about difficult winters, wandering cattle, and the endless search for reliable water. No money changes hands. No written agreement is needed. On the frontier, helping one another is simply understood. You know that one day you may be the person asking for help instead. The morning sun rises gently over the frontier, painting the prairie with soft shades of gold. After yesterday's visit to the small town, your supplies are neatly stored inside the cabin. There is enough flour for another week, fresh coffee to enjoy in the mornings, and a few simple tools that will make life a little easier. Yet as you step outside, you begin to understand that food and equipment are not the most valuable things a settler could own. Out here, trust is worth even more. Life on the American frontier is simply too difficult to survive alone. Cabins are often separated by miles of open land, and neighbors may be the only people who can help when something goes wrong. A broken wagon, a sick child, or an unexpected storm can quickly become a serious emergency. As you begin repairing a section of the roof damaged by yesterday's winds, you notice a rider approaching from across the prairie. It is your nearest neighbor. His horse moves slowly through the tall grass before stopping beside the fence. With a friendly smile, he explains that one of his wagon wheels has cracked while hauling supplies. Without repair, he cannot reach town before the next market day. You set your own work aside without hesitation. Together, the two of you lift the heavy wagon, remove the damaged wheel, and carefully fit a spare one into place. The work is slow and tiring, but conversation makes the hours pass more gently. You exchange stories about difficult winters, wandering cattle, and the endless search for reliable water. No money changes hands. No written agreement is needed. On the frontier, helping one another is simply understood. You know that one day you may be the person asking for help instead. As the afternoon continues, several more neighbors arrive. One brings fresh eggs. Another offers vegetables from a small garden that survived the summer heat. In return, you share a little coffee and some extra firewood gathered earlier in the week. These simple acts of kindness create a quiet bond stronger than any contract. As the sun begins to sink toward the horizon, everyone prepares to return home before darkness falls. The prairie grows peaceful once again, and the distant sound of horses slowly fades into the evening breeze. Standing outside your cabin, you realize something important. The Wild West was never survived by the strongest person alone. The first signs of winter arrived quietly. One cold morning, you stepped outside your cabin and noticed that the grass was covered with a thin layer of white frost. The air felt sharper than it had only a few days before, and every breath drifted away like a small cloud. The frontier looked peaceful beneath the pale morning light, but every experienced settler knew that this beauty carried a warning. Winter was coming. Unlike the modern world, there were no weather forecasts, no heated homes at the touch of a button, and no delivery trucks bringing fresh supplies. Whatever food you had stored during the warmer months would determine whether your family stayed healthy until spring. You spent the entire day preparing. Fresh logs were chopped into neat piles beside the cabin. Sacks of flour were carefully placed where mice could not reach them. Dried beans, smoked meat, and jars of preserved vegetables were counted again and again. Nothing could be wasted. As the weeks passed, the days grew shorter. The sun disappeared earlier each afternoon, and the nights became longer than you remembered. Strong wind swept across the open prairie, rattling the cabin walls while snow slowly covered the ground outside. Travel became difficult. The narrow dirt roads vanished beneath deep snow, making every journey dangerous. Visiting the nearest town, which once took only a few hours, could now require an entire day if the weather remained calm. If a blizzard appeared, even experienced travelers sometimes became lost. Inside the cabin, life slowed to a gentle rhythm. The fire burned almost constantly, filling the room with warmth and the comforting smell of burning pine. You repaired worn clothing, sharpened simple tools, and listened to the quiet crackle of the flames while the storm howled outside. Food was carefully divided into small portions. Every loaf of bread, every handful of beans, and every piece of dried meat had to last. There would be no quick trip to a market if supplies ran out. Some evenings felt almost peaceful. Snowflakes drifted silently beyond the window while the stars shone brighter than you had ever seen. Yet even on those calm nights, everyone understood the same truth. The frontier never stopped testing those who lived there. When spring finally returned, the people who stepped outside were often stronger, wiser, and deeply grateful simply to have survived another winter. And tomorrow, your greatest challenge would not come from the weather. Morning arrives quietly after another freezing night. As the first light reaches the prairie, you finish a simple breakfast and prepare for the longest journey you have ever taken. Your destination lies more than 50 miles away, where a growing settlement is said to offer new opportunities. The distance may not sound impossible today, but in the Wild West, every mile demands patience, strength, and determination. Your horse is loaded with only the essentials. A blanket, a water canteen, dried meat, a small bag of flour, a coffee pot, spare ammunition, and a few basic tools. Every item has a purpose. Carry too much, and your horse will tire quickly. Carry too little, and one unexpected problem could leave you stranded. The trail stretches endlessly across the open prairie. There are no road signs, no maps on a phone, and no nearby gas stations. Your guide is the land itself. The position of the sun, the flow of small rivers, and the distant mountain peaks help you remain on course. Hours pass in peaceful silence. The only sounds are the steady rhythm of hoofbeats, the whisper of dry grass, and the occasional cry of a hawk circling high above. It is beautiful, yet strangely lonely. You realize that many settlers spent entire days without speaking to another person. By afternoon, the weather begins to change. Dark clouds gather over the western horizon, and a cold wind sweeps across the plains. You encourage your horse to move faster, hoping to reach a safe place before the storm arrives. Then, in the distance, you notice the remains of an abandoned wagon. One wheel has broken, and the wooden frame has slowly begun to sink into the earth. No one knows what happened to the family who once traveled with it. On the frontier, broken equipment, harsh weather, or simple bad luck could change a journey forever. As evening approaches, you find a small stream and decide to camp for the night. You gather dry branches, light a small fire, and prepare a modest meal. Above you, thousands of stars fill the clear sky. Without the lights of modern cities, the heavens appear brighter than you ever imagined. Sitting beside the fire, you understand why frontier life demanded more than courage. It required patience, careful planning, and the willingness to face uncertainty every single day. Tomorrow, your journey will finally bring you to a growing frontier settlement, where you will discover how new towns slowly transformed the American West into a very different world. Another sunrise greets the frontier with a soft golden light. The journey has been long, and the land around you is beginning to change. The endless wilderness that once seemed untouched now shows signs of growth. More cabins stand beside the trails. Fresh fences divide open fields. Smoke rises from newly built homes, carrying the comforting smell of breakfast fires into the cool morning air. You continue riding until the familiar silence of the prairie is replaced by the sounds of a busy settlement. Horses pull wagons loaded with timber and grain. Children laugh as they run between wooden buildings. Shopkeepers sweep dust from their porches before opening for the day. Compared with the lonely cabins scattered across the frontier, this small town feels almost lively. During the past few years, thousands of settlers have arrived from different parts of America and beyond. They came searching for farmland, opportunity, and a better future. Every family brought new skills. Some built houses, others opened stores, while blacksmiths, carpenters, teachers, and doctors slowly created a real community. The railroad has also begun to change everything. Where travelers once spent weeks crossing the plains by wagon, trains now carry people and supplies much faster than ever before. Fresh food arrives more often. Letters from distant relatives no longer take months to reach their destination. Small frontier towns become larger every year as more families settle nearby. Life is still difficult, but it is no longer quite as isolated as it once was. Standing beside the station, you watch a train disappear toward the horizon. Thick clouds of steam rise into the sky while its whistle echoes across the open land. It feels like the sound of a new chapter beginning. You think back to your first morning on the frontier, the cold cabin, the straw mattress, the long walk for water, the simple meals, the storms, the lonely nights, and the endless work that filled every day. None of it was easy. Yet each challenge taught the settlers patience, resilience, and gratitude for even the smallest comforts. As the evening sun slowly sinks beyond the western hills, you take one final look across the prairie. The Wild West has not completely vanished, but it is changing with every passing season. Tomorrow, new towns will grow where empty grasslands once stretched to the horizon, and another generation will inherit a land shaped by the courage of those who came before. Now the wind grows gentle once again. The fire burns quietly. The stars begin to appear overhead. And as the frontier slowly fades into history, you close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow this peaceful journey through the American West to come to a calm and restful end. Good night, and sleep well. The first light of morning slips quietly across the frontier town. A cool breeze carries the smell of fresh timber and wood smoke through the empty streets. Most people are still asleep, but one person has already begun another long day. The town sheriff. Unlike the stories told in old movies, a sheriff's life is rarely filled with dramatic gunfights. Most mornings begin with simple duties that help keep a growing community peaceful. Before the shops open and wagons begin rolling through town, the sheriff slowly rides along the main street, greeting early workers with a friendly nod. The town is still small. A general store, a blacksmith's workshop, a church, a stable, and a few wooden homes stand along the dusty road. Everyone knows everyone else by name, and that makes every disagreement feel personal. As the morning grows warmer, a farmer approaches the sheriff with a worried expression. During the night, 2 of his cattle wandered through a broken fence and disappeared into the open prairie. Losing even a single animal could mean losing weeks of hard work. The sheriff listens carefully before gathering a few local volunteers. Together they follow fresh hoofprints leading away from town. The tracks cross shallow streams, patches of dry grass, and rocky ground where they nearly disappear. Hours later, the missing cattle are finally found grazing peacefully beside a distant creek. It is not an exciting adventure, but it is exactly the kind of work that fills most days. By afternoon, another small problem appears. 2 neighbors disagree over the exact line separating their land. Voices grow louder, but before tempers rise any further, the sheriff calmly steps between them. He studies an old survey map, listens patiently to both sides, and helps them reach a peaceful solution. Moments like these matter far more than quick draws or dramatic battles. A quiet town survives because its people trust one another, and because someone is willing to settle problems before they become dangerous. As evening approaches, the sheriff ties his horse outside the office and watches families return home after another day of work. And because someone is willing to settle problems before they become dangerous. As evening approaches, the sheriff ties his horse outside the office and watches families return home after another day of work. Children laugh as they chase one another across the dusty street, while lamps slowly begin glowing behind cabin windows. The frontier is never completely free from danger, but tonight it feels calm. The sheriff smiles quietly, knowing that an uneventful day is often the greatest success anyone in his profession could hope for. As darkness settles over the town, another chapter of frontier life comes to an end. Tomorrow, you will step inside one of the most famous places in the Wild West, the Frontier Saloon, where travelers, ranchers, merchants, and strangers from every corner of the West gathered beneath one wooden roof. As the sun slowly sets beyond the prairie, warm golden light falls across the small frontier town. One building is brighter than all the others. Its windows glow with soft lantern light, and quiet voices drift through the evening air. This is the town saloon. You gently push open the wooden door. Inside, the room feels warm after the cool evening outside. A few travelers sit around wooden tables, speaking in low voices after long days on the trail. Some slowly drink coffee, while others enjoy a simple meal before returning home. The smell of fresh bread, burning firewood, and leather fills the room. In one corner, a man quietly plays a slow tune on an old piano. The music is calm, blending with the gentle sound of conversation. The saloon is more than a place to eat or rest. It is where news travels across the frontier. Ranchers talk about the weather. Merchants discuss arriving wagons. Travelers share stories of distant towns and long roads stretching far beyond the horizon. You take a seat near the fireplace and listen without saying much. Every person has a different story, yet they all share the same difficult life on the frontier. After a while, the lanterns begin to dim. One by one, people put on their hats, step outside, and disappear into the quiet night. Soon the room grows silent again. You leave the saloon and look up at the clear sky. Thousands of stars shine above the peaceful town. Tomorrow, your journey will continue as you spend a full day living like a real cowboy on the endless open plains. The morning begins long before the sun rises above the prairie. The air is cold, and the campfire has almost burned out. You pull on your boots, tighten your hat, and quietly saddle your horse. Today, you will spend the day as a cowboy. Breakfast is simple. A piece of bread, a little dried beef, and a hot cup of black coffee. There is no time for a slow meal because hundreds of cattle must be moved before the heat of the afternoon. As the sky slowly turns golden, the herd begins to walk across the endless grasslands. Your horse moves steadily beside the animals while you keep a careful eye on every direction. Most of the journey is peaceful, but a single frightened cow can cause trouble for the entire herd. The hours pass slowly. Dust rises beneath thousands of hooves, covering your clothes and face. The warm sun climbs higher, and there is almost no shade anywhere on the open plains. You stop only briefly to drink water before continuing the long ride. By afternoon, the herd reaches a small river. One by one, the cattle cross the shallow water while the cowboys guide them safely to the other side. It takes patience, teamwork, and calm voices. Rushing only creates confusion. As evening approaches, the herd finally settles for the night. A small fire is lit, and the cowboys quietly prepare supper. Someone hums a gentle tune while another watches the cattle beneath the fading light. You look across the silent prairie as countless stars slowly appear overhead. It has been a long and tiring day, but also a peaceful one. Tomorrow, you will leave the open grasslands behind and travel deep into the mountains, where thousands of hopeful miners searched for gold and dreamed of changing their lives forever. The morning begins with a long climb into the rocky hills beyond the frontier. The air feels cooler here, and the sound of birds echoes between the cliffs. As you follow a narrow trail, you notice small wooden cabins built against the mountainside. Thin streams of smoke rise from their chimneys. This is a gold mining camp. People from many different places have come here with one dream: to find gold and build a better life. Some have traveled hundreds of miles, leaving their families behind in the hope that a single discovery will change everything. You step inside one of the mines with a lantern in your hand. The tunnel is narrow, dark, and damp. Water drips slowly from the rocky ceiling, while the steady sound of pickaxes echoes through the passage. Miners work patiently for hours, breaking stone a little at a time. Most days, they find nothing. Sometimes they discover only a few tiny flakes of gold, barely enough to pay for food and supplies. Yet every morning they return, believing that the next strike could be the one that changes their future forever. The work is dangerous. Loose rocks may fall without warning, and fresh air is limited deep inside the mine. Every miner understands the risks, but hope keeps them moving forward. As the sun begins to set, the workers leave the mountain one by one. Their faces are covered with dust, and their hands are rough from another long day of hard labor. You pause for one last look at the quiet hills. Beneath these ancient rocks, countless dreams remain hidden, waiting to be discovered. Tomorrow, your journey continues with one of the fastest and most dangerous jobs in the Wild West, the legendary Pony Express rider, racing across hundreds of miles to deliver a single letter. The sky is still dark when you wake to the sound of a horse stamping its feet outside. Today is different from every day before. You are about to ride with the Pony Express, the fastest mail service in the American West. A small leather mailbag is carefully placed on your saddle. Inside are letters from families, business owners, and soldiers. Each envelope carries someone's hope, news, or farewell. Delivering them safely is your only mission. As the sun rises, you urge your horse forward. The trail stretches across rivers, rolling hills, and endless grasslands. You ride at a steady pace, never wasting time. Every minute matters because another rider is already waiting at the next station. After nearly 10 miles, you arrive at a small relay station. Without saying many words, you jump from one horse to another. The mailbag is moved in seconds, and the journey continues almost immediately. The ride is exhausting. Dust fills the air, and the afternoon sun grows hotter with every mile. Sometimes heavy rain turns the trails into deep mud. Other times, strong winds make it difficult to see the path ahead. Still, the riders keep moving. As evening approaches, you finally reach the next station. Your horse is tired, and so are you. The mailbag is handed to another rider, who disappears into the fading light without delay. Watching him ride toward the horizon, you realize that the Pony Express lasted only a short time in history, yet it became a symbol of courage, speed, and determination across the Wild West. Tomorrow, your journey will take you beyond the busy trails and into the vast open plains, where you will learn about the Native American tribes who had called this land home for countless generations before the settlers arrived.